North Korea pulls the plug on a joint cultural performance with South Korea scheduled for February 4th, blaming South Korean media for encouraging insulting public sentiment against the regime. Seoul says the decision is regrettable. With the South Korean government's ambitious plan of cracking down on speculative trading and possible crimes, all anonymous, cryptocurrency accounts will be banned from today. Plus, 3 German car makers are embroiled in yet another scandal, this time for commissioning a test exposing healthy young people to exhaust fumes during a study. So there was hope the run-up to North Korea's participation in the PyeongChang Winter Olympics would be smooth sailing, but another hiccup came late Monday night. Out of the blue, the North called off a joint cultural event scheduled to be held at Mount Kumgang to celebrate the first Olympics on Korean soil in 30 years. For more on the North's sudden change of heart, Lee Seung-jae reports.
From the joint Korean women's ice hockey team to the agreement to walk together during the opening and closing ceremonies of the PyeongChang Winter Olympics, everything looked to be in order, with the biggest international winter sporting event just 10 days away. However, in a telegram notification sent to South Korea at just past 10 p.m. on Monday, the North said it had canceled the planned joint cultural event set to take place at Mount Kumgang on February 4th. According to South Korea's Unification Ministry, the North cited what it claimed to be biased media reports about the upcoming event, adding it had no choice but to cancel because South Korean media continue to insult what North Korea called sincere measures regarding the Winter Olympics. The ministry said the North took issue with the media reports about its internal event, referring to reports about the regime's military parade marking the 70th anniversary of its military on February 8th, the day before the Winter Games kick off. Reports in South Korea have been saying that instead of an earlier projection of 13,000 military personnel and civilians taking place, there will now be around 50,000. The ministry expressed its disappointment, noting that the North's decision may undermine what it had earlier called a hard-earned chance to improve inter-Korean ties. In a statement released shortly after the North's decision, the ministry added that the unilateral decision by North Korea was regrettable, and what it had been agreed should be implemented under the spirit of mutual respect and understanding. The event at Mount Kumgang was initially planned to be a part of a series of events ahead of the Olympics, coming after 3 rounds of talks between the two Koreas. It's uncertain whether this bump in the road will affect other scheduled events between the two Koreas, in particular, the scheduled art performance by a North Korean art troupe set to take place in Gangneung and Seoul. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now staying with the Olympics, despite having to deal with a fickle guest from north of the border, a whole host of high-profile figures from around the world are scheduled to attend the opening of the PyeongChang Winter Olympic Games. Moon Jae-in with the details.
Sports often bring a certain degree of drama, and perhaps never more so than when the two Koreas, rivals of over 6 decades, come together under the name of sports in the spirit of the Olympics. And international sporting mega events like the Olympic Games have stretched beyond sports and into the realm of diplomacy, oftentimes summit diplomacy. With South Korean President Moon Jae-in about to kick off his first multilateral diplomacy at home, yes, on the occasion of the 2018 Winter Olympic Games in PyeongChang, the Blue House on Monday unveiled a list of world leaders visiting the nation next month.
We expect some 2,943 athletes from 92 countries to participate in the Winter Olympics in PyeongChang next month. This is the largest in size for a Winter Olympics. We're also expecting 26 statesmen from 21 nations to visit South Korea.
President Moon's Liberal government is hoping that the North Olympic participation could mark the beginning of something bigger, of something beyond just sports.
Although there remains the challenge of denuclearizing North Korea, South Korea has been hoping to take the PyeongChang Olympics as an opportunity to let as many world leaders know as possible and garner support from the international community.
So it's certainly a disappointment for the Moon administration to see that just one head of state from the 4 key regional powers will be in attendance, as it would have definitely liked to see a stronger showing to set this diplomatic stage to diffuse tensions on the Korean peninsula. Nonetheless, the South Korean leader will take this opportunity to both host and flex his diplomatic muscle.
President Moon will hold a reception for leaders visiting the country for the PyeongChang Winter Olympic Games on the 9th of February, right before the opening ceremony. Now, he'll also hold separate meetings with 14 world leaders, including presidents of Germany and Slovenia, as well as the Secretary General of the United Nations. Now, we've also gotten reports that a Moon Abe summit is in the works for the opening day, which, if realized, will be the first since a diplomatic row broke out over a controversial 2015 agreement over Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. Moon Gon-young, Arirang News, The Blue House.
So, as we just heard in that report, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe plans to use his upcoming summit with President Moon Jae-in to convey his view that Seoul should faithfully follow through on their 2015 deal on Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. Cementing that plan once again, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said Monday that Abe is scheduled to sit down with President Moon on February 9th, just before the opening ceremony of the PyeongChang Olympics. Suga said the two leaders will hold their summit at a hotel near the Olympic Stadium. However, we are still awaiting confirmation from South Korea's presidential office on the summit. Abe's decision to visit South Korea was made last week amid ongoing tensions between Seoul and Tokyo over Japan's wartime atrocities against Korean women, after President Moon called on Japan to offer a fresh apology to the victims, saying the 2015 deal was seriously flawed. North Korea is reportedly cutting back on its annual winter military drills in an apparent sign UN sanctions are biting into the North's already fragile economy. US officials also believe that international pressure aimed at straining the regime's resources is taking a heavy toll. Park So-yeon reports.
New insights suggest UN sanctions may be working effectively to decrease North Korea's winter military exercises that usually run from December through March. Citing U.S. officials, the Wall Street Journal reports that North Korea's armed forces have scaled back their annual winter military exercises this year, a development they believe mirrors growing pressure from the international community. It also reported that UN sanctions that restrict sending oil and refined petroleum products to North Korea have significantly weakened North Korea's economy, forcing the regime to conserve fuel and turn scaling back on its military training. An analyst for US-based North Korea monitoring website 38 North says the UN sanctions will have an effect on ground force readiness, as military units have to train to maintain their proficiency. However, military analysts warned that sanctions haven't yet led to a substantial decline in military readiness, with no apparent signs the penalties are hindering the regime's drive to strengthen its nuclear and missile programs. On top of that, a military parade is reported to be held in Pyongyang early next month to project strength ahead of the Winter Olympics in South Korea. However, a further sign of the discord within the North's military is a rise in the number of defections and internal executions. A top U.S. commander said defections are happening in areas that are not generally seen, for example, crossing the heavily fortified demilitarized zone. Park So-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea's National Assembly will kick off a new parliamentary session this afternoon. It's going to last for 30 days, running till the end of February. The session will start with a full-floor meeting where lawmakers will also likely vote on fire prevention-related bills. This comes as there have been growing calls to revise related laws following a hospital fire in Miriang last week that killed 39 people. Also on the schedule are policy speeches by the leaders of the major parties, as well as an interpellation session where lawmakers will probe top government officials on various areas, including foreign affairs, the economy and social issues. Rival parties will also hold full-floor sessions on February 20th and 28th to vote on pending bills related to people's livelihoods. So it's official, the date has been set. Korea's two centrist parties are becoming one. The centre-left People's Party and the centre-right Bareun Party will hold a joint national convention on February 13th to finalise their merger process, disregarding strong objections from within both parties. The joint committee tasked with prepping for the merger says it will complete all other merger procedures, like selecting the name for the envisioned party by this Thursday. With the link-up, two former presidential candidates from early this year, Ahn Cheol-soo and Yoo Seung-min, also leaders of the parties, will be on the same team. Prosecutors are demanding an 8-year prison term for a former presidential aide mired in the tangled corruption scandal that brought down the previous Park Geun-hye administration. Prosecutors on Monday recommended Woo Byung-woo, Park's senior presidential secretary for civil affairs between 2015 and 2016, should face that amount of time behind bars if he's found guilty of his charges of dereliction of duty, abuse of power and perjury. Who is accused of neglecting his duty to carry out necessary inspections on the suspected irregular government approval on the setup of two foundations allegedly spearheaded by the former president's close confidant Choi Soon-sil, who is currently standing trial for corruption as well. The Seoul Central District Court is due to hand down its verdict on Woo in mid-February. Now, from today, 6 Korean banks will begin allowing the simultaneous opening of accounts, deposits and withdrawals for cryptocurrency trading, as well as transfer of funds between such accounts, but with some new rules in place. Investors will now be required to convert their virtual bank accounts to real name accounts in order to continue trading. Deposits and withdrawals are allowed only between those real name bank accounts and matching crypto exchange accounts within the same bank. Banks with the services include Shinhan, Nonghyop and Industrial Bank of Korea. And all this as the Korean government continues to crack down on speculative trading and possible criminal activities. The Financial Services Commission says it will closely monitor crypto trading that exceeds 1 million won, or some $900 a day, or $18,000 a week. It will also watch accounts owned by corporations or groups while reporting any suspicious activity to the authorities. And a major local online shopping mall and one of South Korea's biggest currency exchanges are joining forces to develop a system that would allow purchases using cryptocurrencies. Although not an entirely new concept, it is still foreign to many people here in South Korea. Lee Jung-yeon provides us with a closer look.
A major project is underway in South Korea for virtual currency. One of the country's biggest online shopping malls, We Make Price, and the largest local crypto exchange, Bithumb, are working on a system that'll see virtual currencies used on a large scale for their original purpose, namely buying things. Currently, Bithumb and We Make Price are waiting on government regulations on virtual currency to be finalized before launching the service. If this were to become possible, it would mean that 12 types of virtual currency, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple, could be used to make purchases online. It's not the first time in Korea that a vendor has accepted virtual currency, but it is the first time that a major online retailer has done so. Crypto prices are notorious for their volatility, so transactions will reflect the coin's value in real time. But not everyone is convinced.
I think for now, the prices of cryptocurrency fluctuate too much, so I would think twice before using it as money. But it will be convenient if I could.
Virtual currency isn't yet backed by the government, so I think there is a risk. I'm not sure, but I feel like it's too soon to be used as currency.
In the United States, Bitcoin is already accepted by major online platforms such as Overstock, Expedia, and Microsoft. Japanese electronics store Bic Camera has also started accepting it at their brick-and-mortar stores. So there's evidence that cryptos are gaining a foothold, but experts see significant downsides.
Current crop doesn't really have a central authority trying to stabilize the prices, so I think they're working against themselves and trying to make this a currency. The value is just too volatile.
Still, the expert says it might be worth a try.
It'll be an interesting experiment. I think a lot of people are going to look at this as perhaps trying to figure out what the future path of the cryptocurrency will be, whether it will be able to fulfill its original intention as a currency, or whether it'll just be a niche asset.
He also speculates that it could be years before the value of cryptos is stable enough for it to become a mainstream form of currency. Lee Jong-hyun, Arirang News.
Now, Korea has big plans to turn the country's administrative hub of Sejong and the southeastern port city of Busan into test beds for the realization of smart cities. In line with the fast-approaching fourth industrial revolution, the government hopes to turn those cities into the cities of the future by 2023. Kim Hae-sung reports.
The government's Committee on the Fourth Industrial Revolution held its first meeting of the year on Monday to discuss measures related to the so-called Smart City Framework, a way of using information technology to improve the way cities are run.
The Fourth Industrial Revolution has a huge effect socioeconomically. Smart City is a platform using related technologies and services. Today, we will deliberate on a Smart City development plan that has been worked on by government officials and private sector experts since last November.
The Smart City platform combines infrastructure, technology, and services. It uses tech like the Internet of Things and big data to share information on things like traffic, transportation, or the weather, which improves efficiency by saving energy and labor costs.
Our Smart City plan has two main parts, providing development plans for cities based on their development stage. That goes for both new cities and old cities. For new cities, smart technologies will be applied from the design stage to final construction to drive innovative growth.
One of the new cities is in an area in Busan and another is in the country's administrative hub of Sejong. They'll become test beds for cutting-edge technologies like artificial intelligence, smart farms, and driverless cars. For instance, the government envisions a city connected by the Internet of Things, electric vehicles powered by renewables, and deliveries by drone, all of which would help increase efficiency. As for existing so-called old cities, the government plans to save energy by using renewable sources as a form of urban power generation. The broad picture has been unveiled, but it's still in its initial stage. For the plan to be carried out in a sustainable way, details need to be fleshed out on things like the government's budget, cooperation between the private and public sectors, and a system for evaluating performance. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Now for a look at stories making headlines around the world, and we're going to start with another diesel scandal surrounding German car makers. This time it's not about emissions cheating, but experiments funded by the firms in which humans and monkeys reportedly inhaled diesel exhaust fumes. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Noah Adam. So Adam, Volkswagen has already been under fire for its huge emissions scandal, and now a potentially much more disturbing revelation has come out affecting VW, but also two other major German automakers.
That's right, Mark. Local reports came out on Monday that a research group called EUGT, financed by VW, BMW and Daimler, the maker of Mercedes-Benz, had measured the effects of inhaling nitrogen oxide gases on 25 healthy human beings at a German university hospital. These tests were said to have taken place between 2012 and 2015. The revelation came days after the New York Times reported that the research group had carried out similar tests on monkeys in the US in the year 2014. They were apparently carried out to counter a 2012 decision by the World Health Organization to classify diesel exhaust fumes as a carcinogen. However, the VW Beetle model used in the test was one of the millions programmed to reduce emissions when lab testing is detected, thus invalidating the data obtained. The new scandal has sent shockwaves through Germany, and the country's environment minister described the experiments as, quote, abominable. A spokesperson for German Chancellor Angela Merkel also said they cannot be justified ethically in any way. Meanwhile, the car makers themselves seem to be sidestepping responsibility and even going as far as denouncing the experiments. Daimler said it was appalled by the extent of the EU GT studies and their implementation. VW, however, while apologising for the tests, insisted it explicitly distances itself clearly from all forms of animal abuse. BMW denied it was involved in the studies. All three firms decided in late 2016 to dissolve the EU GT, which finally shut its doors last year. FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is reportedly leaving his position ahead of a previously planned retirement this spring. He led the bureau for months last year following the firing of former Director James Comey until Christopher Wray took the helm. McCabe has often been criticized by President Trump for being politically motivated, as an investigation into alleged collusion between Trump's 2016 presidential campaign and Russia continues. McCain was slated to retire in March, but he is able to step down earlier with his accumulated leave. US media reports he is leaving his post on Monday. Asked about his departure, White House spokeswoman Sarah Sanders told reporters that President Trump was not part of the decision-making process. The FBI is yet to make a formal statement on the matter. The Wall Street Journal reports that an increase in US military action in Afghanistan over the past year has been accompanied by a higher number of casualties. In its report on Monday, the paper said that 141 American service members were killed or wounded in the 12-month period through November last year, marking a 35% on-year surge. 14 were reported to be killed in action, up from 7 deaths in the previous year, while 127 were wounded. Most of the casualties have occurred in the last 6 months, leading to President Trump ruling out any possible peace talks with the Taliban, which is a contradiction of his own strategy to end America's longest foreign war.
Good morning. We had another freezing start to the day. Upper regions had lows way below -10 degrees Celsius, so you need to dress warmly before heading out. But the temperature readings will rise rapidly, and by the afternoon, Seoul will see highs in the positive territory, and readings will remain at seasonal averages until Friday. On that note, here are the readings for this afternoon. Seoul will get up to 1 degree Celsius, while southern provinces will have similar highs to the yesterday. Now, the season's final round of cold snap is in the forecast this weekend, which will linger until early next week, so don't put away your thick jacket just yet. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. While most of us in Seoul will finally see afternoon highs rising back to near seasonal averages, most cities in North Korea will also see readings easing up this afternoon. And as for the rest of Asia, China's national observation renewed a blue alert Monday as a cold front continued to hit central and east China. Meanwhile, Australia's high summer heat wave is about to end. Rain is on its way, and the outlook for the rest of summer is for generally cooler temperatures. Heading to North America, Chicago will have higher temperatures than yesterday, slightly above the freezing mark. And as for South America, those of you in Rio de Janeiro will not see sun until Friday. Rain and scattered thunderstorms will dominate most of the days. Taking you to Europe, Moscow will be blanketed with snow until Saturday, along with freezing temperatures. Lastly, to Africa, light rainfall is in the forecast in Cape Town, but we are not expecting significant amount. And that's all the weather update for now.
Thank you as always to our Jihyun for the weather update, and that's where we're going to leave the news for now. Just a reminder that you can always catch up on what's happening in Korea by going to our website. That can be found by going to arirang.com/news. We'll be back with our next newscast. It's coming up at noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye.
2018 PyeongChang Winter Olympics. Arirang.